And hello, hi, welcome to another training session. So today we are discussing encoders. So what is an encoder? An encoder is an electromechanical feedback device that provides information about, things like position, count, speed, and direction. So encoders provide signals that are received by a control device in order to perform specific function. They are, when it comes to your encoders, there are two main categories of encoders based on the type of position information they produce. So, we're gonna talk about your incremental encoder, right? Also called your shaft encoder, and of course, your absolute encoder. So, how do they work? Let's talk about the incremental encoder. So, incremental encoders provide a steady stream of high and low pulses, right? That indicates movement from one position to the next. No. So the encoder does not indicate any specific position. It doesn't do that. It only tells you if it has moved. No. So now let's talk about the absolute encoder. So absolute encoders, on the other hand, indicate both the position has changed and the location of what position related to the shaft rotation. So the encoder provides unique digital word or bit for each increment of rotation. Okay, now let's take a look at an encoder inside. Right, so now this little guy over here, inside we have what you called your, this one is a optical encoder, right? And well, the module has LED on one side and a photo sensor on the other side. The disc has a series of lines on it. These lines block the LED light from reaching the photo sensor and the transparent space. So this alternating pattern of light and dark is how the encoder reports position information back to the mechanical system. So now let's make this example. So imagine this guy represents a photo detector and his binoculars represents the field of view. Okay, so now what happened is every time, like this guy who keeps on blocking the light, and the encoder reports the data when the light is blocked, right, or received by the sensor, and uses the information to report back to the system represented by this guy over here. He represents to the system, and then he says, hey, I've got 18 degrees. And then now the system must record what the encoder has given. So be it in terms of speed, direction, or position, all the information must be reported. Okay, now let's talk about the difference. So now imagine there's no power, right? And when it comes to an absolute encoder, there's no power, and the encoder already captured the certain position and direction, right? And now when power is restored back, the absolute encoder is designed to give you the exact same position and direction and count where it was. No data is lost. But now, on the other hand, with your incremental encoder, once you take away the power, and then you restore it back, there is no information. There has to be reference. You have to reference it to get the readings again, the count, actually, where it was counting, how far it was counting, things like that. So now let's talk about the practical side of it. Since we know now that with an absolute encoder, you can tell the exact position of the shaft in its rotation at any given time. and you measure both your position, your direction, you know, that's your absolute encoder. Like right here with your height, your absolute encoder is the one doing all that work, giving you all the information, recording the data, transferring it back to your PLC, or you see, because in most cases, your absolute encoders, they give the information back to your PLC, whereby with your incremental encoder, your shaft encoder, those ones, they give information to your drive and then your drive to your PLC, right? So your incremental over here. And well, there has to be movement with this one so that it can give back the feedback. There has to be a direction. Yeah, well, there has to be rotation. And yeah, well, so that's the difference. Yeah, well, depends on the design. Some, but in most cases, they will be in your drive, but it depends with your designs and stuff. So now with power failure, as we spoke about, your incremental encoder loses the information. So the position value is lost. And as you can see here, it doesn't know where it was, how far it was counting. It wouldn't know that. But with your absolute encoder, it will give you all that information because it will continue where it was, right? So now there has to be rotation with this one so that it can continue to give you the feedback. So yeah, thank you very much.